it! Radar emission.
Hi, I'm Flight Commander Wasiluddin. Well, it was my childhood dream to be a pilot, but here I am as a programmer. Well, it doesn't mean that I should stop chasing my dreams, right? So today I am going to teach you how you can fly an aircraft by making a virtual flight simulator so that you and me can fulfill our long-awaited dream. So without further ado, let's get started. At first, I will do the first basic thing that we need to do for creating any computer vision projects, that is, setting up our webcam. At first, I will install OpenCV module using the command pip install opencv-contrib-python. I have it pre-installed in my system already. Now let's import OpenCV using import cv2. Next, I will create a video capture object named cap and set it to 1. I have set it to 1 as I am using an external webcam. You can set it to 0 if you are using your system's default webcam. After creating the video capture object, I will set its width and height to 640 and 480 respectively. Here 3 and 4 represents the width and height of the video capture object. Next, I will create a while loop and set it to true. Now I will read in the feed from my webcam frame by frame and store it in the img variable. Here success stores the boolean value true or false, representing if the feed from my webcam is being read in properly or not. Next, I will flip the frame horizontally using cv2.flip. Now I will display the stored frame using cv2.imshow, where at first I will pass in the window name. Let's name it camera feed. You can give it any name you like. Then I will pass in the img variable. At last, I will set a delay between each frame using cv2.waitKey. I have set it to 1, and I will set a program exit command so that the program will exit out of the loop if the alphabet Q key is pressed on the keyboard. I will also set up an FPS reader to see how fast my frames are being read in from my webcam. For this, I will use the module CVZone. You can install CVZone using the command pip install CVZone. I have it pre-installed in my system already. Now I will import CVZone. Then I will create a FPS object named FPS reader using the method cvzone.fps. Then using the method fpsreader.update, here I will show the FPS reading at the left corner of the frame by passing in the img variable at first, then the position on the frame where I want the FPS value to be displayed, then the color of the text, then the scale and thickness value. Now let's run the code. Here I can see the FPS reading at the left corner of my camera feed. As my webcam setup is properly done, let's move on to the next step. At first, I will set up the facial gestures to control the movement of the aircraft. For this, from cvzone.faceMesh module, I will import faceMesh detector. Then I will create a faceMesh detector object named detector1 and pass in the argument maxFaces equals to 1. Next, using the method detector1.findFaceMesh, I will extract all my facial information like all of my facial landmarks and store it in faces variable. Here I have set draw equals to false so that the processed image doesn't have the facial landmarks drawn on it. Now as I have my facial landmarks stored in faces variable, let me explain you how I am going to use these landmarks to control the aircraft. To set up my facial controls, I will make the use of 3 landmarks on my face, specifically landmark number 168, that is the middle point between my 2 eyes, landmark number 57, a point situated on the left side of my lips, and at last landmark number 28, a point situated on the right side of my lip. So these 3 points will be my control points that I will use to steer the aircraft. But my main control point will be the point represented by landmark index number 168, that is the middle point between my 2 eyes. Now with respect to this main control point, I will call it by Ctrl X and Ctrl Y, representing the coordinates of that point. I will draw a vertical straight line that will act as a control baseline for steering the aircraft left and right. It will work like this. If the main control point, that is control X, is in between the left and right points, then the aircraft will continue to go straight. Next, if the control X value is less than left X, then the aircraft will go left. And if it is greater than right X, the aircraft will go to the right. That's the part of steering the aircraft left and right. Now I will create another horizontal control line for moving the aircraft up and down. If I take my eye level above the horizontal control line, then the aircraft will move upwards. And if I take my eye level below this control line, the aircraft will go downwards. It's a little bit hazy at first, but once we get to coding and try it out, it will seem more clear. Then if my face is detected in the frame, then I will extract the coordinates of the landmarks whose index number is 168, 57 and 287 in Ctrl X, Ctrl Y, left X, left Y and right X, right Y respectively. Now I will highlight these facial points using the method cv2.circle, where at first I will pass in the img variable, then the coordinates of the facial point, then the radius of the circle, the color of the circle, and finally the thickness of the circle. Next, I will draw the control baselines that will be used for moving the aircraft up and down or left and right using the method cv2.line. Now let's run the code. Here you can see that my facial points are highlighted with the color light blue and the control baselines are shown in white. My facial points has been set up perfectly. Now I will code the part for moving the aircraft. At first I will declare 4 variables: go right, go left, go up, go down, that will depict the state of the movement of the aircraft. I have initialized all of their values to 0, which depicts the aircraft is going straight initially. Next, I will write an if condition where if right X is less than Ctrl X and go right is equal to 0, I will set go right equals to 1 and print the statement going right. Now to make the aircraft to move to the left direction, I will write another if condition where if left X is greater than Ctrl X and go left equals to 0, I will set go left equals to 1 and print the statement going left. Next comes the part of keeping the aircraft straight. Here if right X is greater than Ctrl X and left X is less than Ctrl X, then I will write 2 nested if conditions. If go right equals to 1, I will set it to 0. If go left equals to 1, I will set go left equals to 0. Now in case for moving the aircraft up and down, there is a problem that we need to solve. Let me explain the problem to you. The main problem here is that the horizontal control line is moving up and down as I am moving my face. I need to create a static control line that will be fixed when I am ready to fly the aircraft, and this line will be used for moving the aircraft up and down. We can solve this problem in a simple way. I will set a gesture movement using my hands that will set the horizontal static line. The gesture will be like this. This should be the initial posture of my hands, like I am holding the joystick of the aircraft. Both of my thumb will stay open upwards. Now if I open my pinky fingers, the static control line for moving the aircraft up and down should be set and my gesture control should be enabled. So let's code it. For this I need to detect my hands. So now from cvzone.handTracking module, I will import hand detector. Then I will create a hand detector object named detector2 where I have passed the arguments max hands equals to 2. You can set it to any value that suits you. Then I will extract all the information of my hands using the method detector2.findHands and store it in the hands variable. Here I have at first passed in the img variable and then set draw equals to true, and I have set fleet type equals to false, as I have flipped my input frame at the very beginning. Now if len hands equals to 2, that is my 2 hands is present in the frame, then if the first hand information out of my 2 hands stored in hands is my left hand, then I will store the information of my respective hands in their respective variables. Again, if the first hand information stored in hands variable does not belong to my left hand, then I will store my hand information correctly in their respective variables using the else statement. Next, I will count how many fingers of my left and right hand are raised up, keeping the initial hand posture that I have previously discussed. I will create a gesture control track variable and initialize it to 0. Now I will write an if condition where if my left thumb and pinky finger is open and my right thumb and pinky finger is open and the total number of open fingers in both of my hands is equals to 2 and gesture control track equals to 0, then I will set up down line control variable to control y, which will store the y coordinate of our fixed horizontal static line. Then I will set gesture control track equals to 1 and print gesture enabled. After setting the gesture control track to 1, I will add a cooldown of 3 seconds to my program so that I can regain my hand posture that I will need to fly the aircraft. To do this, I will use threading. I am using threading because if I want to add an interval directly in the loop, the program will freeze, which I don't want to happen. Threading will allow me to add interval in the place where I want without interrupting the loop. You can install threading using the command pip install threading. I have threading pre-installed in my system already. Now I will import threading. Then I will create a variable named GestureOn and set it to none. Next, I will create a thread named GestureOnThread using threading.thread where I will pass the function GestureEnable in the target argument. Now I will create the GestureEnable function writing def gestenable. Next, I will declare GestureOn variable and GestureOnThread as global. Next, I will add a delay of 3 seconds using the time module. For this, at first I will import time. Then I will set a delay of 3 seconds using time.slip. Then I will set GestureOn equals to 1 and print the statement gesture control on. At last I will restart the GestureOnThread like the way I have initialized it before. Now finally I can set the thread in my code for adding the delay to regain my hand posture for controlling the aircraft. Here I will start the thread using GestureOnThread.start method. I will also bring all the codes for controlling the aircraft under the if condition GestureOn equals to 1. Thus the codes for controlling the aircraft will be activated when I do the required gesture. Now I will draw the horizontal static line in my frame as I get my up-down line control value after enabling my gestures. Now it's time to code the code to make the aircraft move up and down. For moving the aircraft up, if the absolute difference between up-down line control and control Y is greater than 20 and up-down line control is greater than control Y and go up equals to 0, I will set go up equals to 1 and print going up. Again, if the absolute difference decreases than 20 and up-down line control is greater than control Y and go up is equals to 1, I will set go up equals to 0. I will do the same thing for moving the aircraft down. If the absolute difference between up-down line control and control Y is greater than 35 and up-down line control is less than control Y and go down equals to 0, I will set go down equals to 1 and print going down. Again, if the absolute difference becomes less than 35 and go down equals to 1, I will set go down equals to 0. Now it's time to test my facial gestures to see if they're working properly or not. At first I will enable my gestures. Gestures has been enabled. To move the aircraft to the right, I will tilt my head to the right. Now if I tilt my head towards left, the aircraft will move towards left. If I take my eye level above the control static line, the aircraft will move upwards. And if I take my eye level below the static line, the aircraft will move downwards. Everything is working smoothly. As my facial gestures relating to the movement of the aircraft is complete, I can move on to the next step, that is writing the code for setting up various functions of the aircraft. These functions include launching missiles, deploying flares, aircraft's gun firing, engaging speed boosters. So for this, at first I will store all the landmarks of my respective hands in Allen list left and Allen list right using the key Allen list in hands left and hands right. Next, I will extract the x and y coordinates of the tip of my thumb and the third landmark from the top of my index finger from Allen list R and Allen list left. Here the index 6 and 4 represents the third landmark from the top of my index finger and the tip of my thumb finger respectively. Next, I will highlight the extracted coordinates of fingers of both of my hands by drawing circles using the method cv2.circle. Now if I run the code, here the tip of my thumb and the third landmark from the tip of my index finger of my left and right hand are highlighted in yellow. Now it's time to set up the functions of the aircraft. At first I will set up the aircraft's missile launching system. Let me explain how can we set up the missile firing mechanism. This will be the initial posture of my hands that will represent I am holding the joystick of the aircraft. Both of my thumbs will stay open upwards. Now if I close both of my thumbs, a missile should be launched from my aircraft. So how can I code this? It's pretty simple. I will just need to check while keeping my hand in that posture, the tip of both of my hands is below the third landmark of my index finger or not. I will write the if condition if the absolute difference between the y coordinate of the tip of my thumb finger and the third landmark of my index finger of my right and left hand is less than 30, then I will consider both of my fingers are closed, then the missile will be launched and I will print missile launched. But here I need to set a cooldown time of 2 seconds because between the interval of me closing and opening both of my thumbs to initiate a single command to launch the missile, multiple commands to launch the missile are sent as the loop of the program runs very fast. So for this I will create a control state variable. Let's name it missile cooldown. I have initialized it to 0. Now I will add the condition in the if statement that if missile cooldown is also equals to 0, then I will set missile cooldown equals to 1. Then I will use threading so that the code for launching the missile stays inactive for some time. I am using threading here as I have previously discussed. Suppose here I am adding a pause, say of 2 seconds, the loop will freeze, then the whole program will come to a temporary standstill, which I don't want to happen in this case. So at first I will create a thread named missile cooldown thread using threading.thread, setting the target to missile cooldown function. Now I will create the missile cooldown function. I will write def missile cooldown function, no parameters passed here. Then I will declare missile cooldown and missile cooldown thread as global. I will set time.sleep equals to 2 to add an interval of 2 seconds. Next I will set missile cooldown control state variable to 0 and print missile reloaded. Finally I will restart the thread to use it again. Now at last, in the if statement, I will start the thread with the method missile cooldown thread dot start. Similarly, I can code the part for launching flares and aircrafts gun firing. At first, I will create two control state variables, flare cooldown and fire on, and initialize them to 0. Then for the case for deploying the flares, I will write an elif condition if my right thumb is open and my left thumb is closed and flare cooldown equals to 0, then flares will be deployed. If the condition is true, I will set flare cooldown to 1 and print flares deployed. Now I will create a cooldown thread for flares like as before. I will create a thread named flare cooldown thread, setting the target of the thread to flare cooldown function. Next, I will create the function. I will declare flare cooldown and flare cooldown thread as global. I will add an interval of 2 seconds using time.sleep. Then I will set flare cooldown equals to 0 and print flares reloaded. Finally, I will restart the thread after printing flares reloaded. Now for the aircraft's gun firing part. I will write another elif statement if my right thumb is closed and my left thumb is open and fire on equals to 0, then the aircraft will start firing from its gun. If the condition is true, I will set fire on to 1 and print gun firing. Here I don't have to create a cooldown thread as the gun firing function of my aircraft is continuous, that is, the aircraft will continue firing as long as I keep my right thumb closed. So I don't have to worry about giving multiple gun firing commands instead of one while closing my thumb finger. Next, I will create another if condition stating if the absolute difference between y and right index y is greater than 30, that is my right thumb is open, and fire on equals to 1, I will set fire on to 0 and print firing stop. Now the aircraft's gun firing function is complete. Now it's time to set the aircraft's speed boosters. At first, let me show you the gesture for engaging the aircraft's speed boosters. While keeping my hand at the posture that I'm holding the joystick of the aircraft, if I bring both of my hands closer to each other, simply speaking, if the absolute difference between the third landmark of both of my hands is less than a certain value, then the boosters will be engaged. Now it's time to code it. At first, I will create a control state variable booster cooldown and initialize it to 0. Now if the absolute difference between right index x and left index x, that is the absolute difference of the third landmark from the top of my index finger of both of my hands is less than 50 and booster cooldown is equal to 0, I will set booster cooldown equals to 1 and print booster engaged. Here I also need to thread it to add an interval like I did it for the missile launching and flares deploying part. I will create a thread named booster cooldown thread and set the target function to booster cooldown function. Now I will create the function. I will declare booster cooldown and booster cooldown thread as global. I will add an interval of 2 seconds using time.sleep. I will set booster cooldown to 0, print boosters cooling down, and restart the booster cooldown thread. Now in the if condition, after printing booster engaged, I will start the booster cooldown thread using the start method. Now as the setup of my hand gesture controls to access the functions of the aircraft is complete, let's check whether these functions are working properly or not. At first, I will enable my gestures. Gesture has been enabled. If I close both of my thumbs, a missile from the aircraft should be launched. Missile has been launched successfully. If I close my left thumb, flares should be deployed. Flare has been deployed. If I close my right thumb, then gun firing from the aircraft should start. Gun firing is on. Gun firing is stopped. If I bring both of my hands closer to each other, speed boosters should be activated. Nice. Speed boosters has been engaged. My hand gestures for accessing the functions of the aircraft are working absolutely fine. Now it's time to integrate my code with the controls of my keyboard. At first, let's check how my controls are mapped in my keyboard to control the aircraft. In my keyboard, I can make the aircraft go up and down pressing the W and S key respectively. If I want to make the aircraft go left or right, I have to press the A or D key. Now for the aircraft's function. To launch a missile, I have to press the up arrow key. To deploy flares, I will press the down key. And for gun firing and speed boosters, I will press the left and right key respectively. And for gun firing and speed boosters, I will press the left and right key respectively. So these are my controls. So now back to the coding part. To integrate the controls, I will use the module PyAutoGui. You can install PyAutoGui module using the command pip install PyAutoGui. I have it pre-installed in my system already. Now I will import PyAutoGui. Next, I will set the controls for flying the aircraft. For flying the aircraft to the right, I will press down the D key using PyAutoGui.keyDown. I will do the same thing for flying the aircraft to the left. I will fly to the left by pressing down the A key. Next, in the part of keeping the aircraft straight, if go right equals to 1, I will release the D key using PyAutoGui.keyUp. Similarly, if go left equals to 1, I will release the A key. Now I will make the aircraft go up by pressing down the W key. And if the aircraft is not going up anymore, I will release the W key. Similarly, I will make the aircraft go down by pressing down the S key, and if the aircraft is not going down anymore, I will release the S key. Next, to launch the missile, I will set PyAutoGui.press to up key arrow, and for launching the flares, I will press down the arrow key using PyAutoGui.press. It looks like here I forgot to start the flare cooldown thread. Let's start the thread using flare cooldown thread.start method. To keep firing the aircraft gun, I will press down the left key using PyAutoGui.keyDown. Again, if I raise my thumb finger indicating to pause firing, I will release the left key using PyAutoGui.keyUp. At last, I will engage the speed boosters pressing the right key using the PyAutoGui.press method. Now, as the commands from my code has been mapped to the controls of my keyboard, it's time to test my code to see if the aircraft is properly responding to my gestures or not. Here I have opened the multiplayer online game Sky Combat using BlueStacks. I have selected the game window so that my PyAutoGui commands work on the game window. It's time to check the controls of the aircraft. I will enable my gestures. At first, I will try to steer the aircraft. It's working fine. I will try launching a missile. Now I will deploy flares. I will test gun firing. At last, I will test the speed boosters. Everything is working fine smoothly. Now the time has arrived to test the aircraft in the battlefield. So mission has been accomplished. Over and out. See you next time.